even before Michael Jordan won the title in 91. From 88 on, it was clear that Michael Jordan, even with Larry Bird or Magic Johnson winning championships, it was clear that Michael Jordan was the best player in the world. There's no way that you could watch Michael Jordan and LeBron James and think that Michael Jordan is not the GOAT. So let me break it down for you. Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles. Michael Jordan was a 9-time All-NBA defensive team member. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, 6 NBA Finals MVPs, never once allowed a game to get to a championship series to get to a Game 7. Never once.
Stephen A. Smith just went into full battle mode after LeBron James got locked up in the playoffs, and the entire conversation turned into one of those classic basketball debates that never really die. The moment LeBron starts getting shut down by a defense that refuses to let him breathe, the internet starts doing what it always does. Some people blame the roster, some people blame the coach, some people blame age, and then Stephen A. Smith comes in and says the part that sets everybody off. If you really watched Michael Jordan, there is no way you can honestly say LeBron is the GOAT over him. Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles. Michael Jordan was a 9-time All-NBA defensive team member. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, 6 NBA Finals MVPs, and never once allowed a championship series to get to a Game 7. Never once. That was in his 13 years in Chicago. We are not counting the 2 years with the Wizards. He was trying to become an owner, and they needed him to come out of retirement to have an ownership stake. That is the kind of statement that always lights the room on fire. And what makes it even better, or worse depending on which side you are on, is that Stephen A. was not just tossing out empty noise. He came prepared with the full argument. He brought up Jordan's scoring titles, his defensive awards, his championships, his finals record, his consistency, and the fact that he never had to go through a Game 7 in the finals during his Chicago run. In Stephen A.'s eyes, that is not just dominance. That is control. That is brutality. That is the kind of basketball that leaves no room for doubt. And that is really the heart of this debate. Not just who was better, not just who had the prettier highlights, not just who played longer, but who made other teams feel like they were going into a war they were almost guaranteed to lose. He hit the 3. He got to the free throw line, made free throws, and everybody kind of chipped in. It was just a gutty win for us. Stephen A. believes that was Jordan. The way he tells it, Jordan was not just winning. He was breaking people, ruining franchises, ending eras, and leaving teams so mentally damaged that they never really recovered. According to him, that is what separates Jordan from every other superstar in NBA history, including LeBron James. LeBron may be universally respected, but Jordan was feared. And Stephen A. thinks that difference matters more than anything else because it was not just another highlight debate. It was a very emotional, very loud, very Stephen A. version of the old Jordan versus LeBron argument. And he framed it around something that fans can actually picture. He is basically saying that when Jordan showed up, teams were not just trying to beat him, they were trying to survive him. They were trying not to get embarrassed. They were trying not to get psychologically crushed before the game even started. That is a different kind of pressure, and Stephen A. says LeBron never quite did that to people in the same way. Now, to be fair, LeBron has his own case, and Stephen A. even acknowledged that. He called LeBron one of the all-time greats, a Mount Rushmore player, one of the top 3 players ever depending on who you ask. He is not pretending LeBron is some random star who got lucky. He knows exactly how good LeBron is. Everybody does. The debate is not about whether LeBron is great. That part is settled. The debate is about whether he is greater than Michael Jordan, and that is where things get emotional very fast. Stephen A. leaned hard into the old-school side of the argument. He pointed to Jordan's scoring titles, his defensive dominance, his 6 championships, and the fact that he never had to go through a Game 7 in the finals. That last point is huge in these debates because it is one of the cleanest ways Jordan supporters separate him from everyone else. To them, the perfect 6-4-6 finals record is not just a number. It is proof of control. It is proof that when Jordan got there, He did not leave things hanging in the balance. He ended them. That kind of perfection creates mythology, and Stephen A. clearly thinks that mythology is earned, not exaggerated. He is not talking like somebody casually comparing box scores. He is talking like somebody who saw the era unfold and remembers what it felt like when Jordan was on the floor. He brought up how defenses had to be adjusted just to survive Jordan. He talked about how the NBA had to physically change rules and styles in order to deal with him. That is another thing Jordan supporters love to bring up. They say Jordan was so dominant that the league had to react to him. The Jordan rules were not a talking point because he was just good. They were a talking point because he forced entire franchises to think differently about defense, physicality, and game planning. That matters to people like Stephen A. What also makes this argument so compelling is the way he contrasts that with LeBron. LeBron, in his view, is more of a complete player in terms of versatility and workload, but not quite the same killer. Stephen A. says LeBron is asked to do more on a team-by-team basis, especially in modern basketball, because he has to score, rebound, defend, distribute, and carry more of the offensive burden without always having an equal superstar beside him. That is a fair point. LeBron has spent most of his career carrying a much bigger all-around load than Jordan often did. But Stephen A. does not think that makes him better. That is where the argument turns from total production to mentality. He basically says Jordan came into the league with that edge already built in. He did not have to learn how to become a killer. He already was one. LeBron, according to Stephen A., had to develop that over time, and even now, it still does not compare to the instinct Jordan naturally had. That is an old-school basketball opinion, but it is one that a lot of people still share. And once Stephen A. started talking about the mental side of it, the argument became bigger than rings because now you are talking about fear, intimidation, aura, presence, and the kind of thing that makes opposing players uneasy before tip-off. Jordan had that. LeBron, according to Stephen A., had respect but not fear. That is one of the most repeated differences in the entire GOAT debate. People who side with Jordan love to say LeBron was admired, but Jordan was terrifying. Stephen A. was essentially saying the same thing in his own dramatic way. LeBron might be one of the most respected players of all time, but Jordan made people feel like the game was already over before they stepped on the floor with him. We talk about his 13 years in Chicago. That's what he's done. By the way, he played 82 games 7 or 8 times. All 82 games. By the way, it was significantly more physical back then. You see, somebody like you would have got arrested, you understand? You can't touch him today. Back then, you could mug him, you understand? They created rules to stop him, you understand? Watch The Last Dance. And then Stephen A. got even more animated when he started describing what he actually saw from Jordan in real playoff battles. Not the YouTube clips, not the highlight reels, not the edited nostalgia packages. He was talking about being there, seeing teams walk into an arena and already looking defeated. He described the body language, the anxiety, the sense that some opponents were already mentally drained before the game tipped off. That kind of detail gives his argument extra weight because it is not coming from theory. It is coming from memory. It is coming from live experience. That is exactly why his tone changes the conversation, because a lot of younger fans, or even fans who never saw Jordan live, tend to watch old clips and make their judgment based on highlights. That is not the same thing as being in the building. When you are in the building, you see the way the crowd reacts, the way the other team moves, and the way pressure changes the entire energy in the arena. Stephen A. keeps telling the audience that if you were there, you would know the difference. And in his eyes, the difference is huge. He even brought up stories from other players like Kevin Garnett, describing what happened when younger guys talked trash to Jordan. The pattern is always the same. At first, they think they can go after him. Then the game starts. Jordan starts turning it on. Then suddenly, they're gasping for air while he's sitting on 40 and they're still stuck on 10. That is the kind of psychological takeover that Jordan loyalists love to point to. It's not just about scoring. It's about humiliating the opponent into submission. That is why Stephen A. sees the comparison as almost disrespectful when it's framed the wrong way. To him, LeBron being asked to do more is not the same thing as being better. It's not even the same debate. One is about workload. The other is about dominance. And dominance, in Stephen A.'s eyes, belongs to Jordan. LeBron supporters often argue that LeBron had to do more because he was the point forward, the engine, the organizer, the playmaker, and the primary defensive presence in many of his best seasons. That is true, but Stephen A. would say that even with that expanded responsibility, LeBron still did not produce the same kind of intimidating finality that Jordan did in the playoffs. That is why this argument never ends. LeBron's case is built on total excellence over time. Jordan's case is built on ruthless excellence in the biggest moments. LeBron has more cumulative mileage, more longevity, more all-around statistical versatility, and a level of durability that seems almost unnatural. Jordan had the cleaner finishing line, the more feared reputation, the undefeated finals run, and the kind of postseason domination that feels almost mythical. You can see why people split the way they do. But Stephen A. is not in the middle. He is very much on one side. And one of the reasons his argument lands so hard is that he doesn't just say Jordan was better. He says LeBron fans are often relying on emotion instead of facts. That line is always going to set people off because it implies the debate is already settled if you're being honest enough. Stephen A. clearly believes that the numbers, the records, the pressure moments, and the psychological impact all point the same way. In his view, Jordan is not just slightly ahead. He's in a different category. That is the kind of statement that gets repeated over and over because it's such a strong line in the sand. Of course, LeBron supporters are never going to sit back and accept that quietly. They'll point out that LeBron played in more finals, that he carried weaker teams deeper into the postseason, and that he has had to function under a different style of basketball than Jordan did. They will say the modern NBA is more physical in terms of travel, spacing, minutes management, and the burden of being the face of the league across 2 decades. They will argue that Jordan had the luxury of a more stable structure in certain years, and that LeBron had to adapt to a changing league, changing teammates, and changing expectations. And they're not wrong either. That is what makes the argument so messy and so fun at the same time. Both sides have a case. Both sides can point to real evidence, but Stephen A. is trying to cut through all the noise by going back to one basic question. When the stakes were highest, who made the other team feel hopeless? When they were talking about Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, and John Sally said one of the biggest components of the Jordan rules was, attack him before he gets airborne because you know he wasn't human, right? That's what he said. Mike, I got LeBron James on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, one of the all-time top 3, one of the all-time greatest players, but he's lost 6 NBA finals. For him, the answer is Jordan. The playoff context of the clip is what really gives it that extra sting because this is not a theoretical conversation happening in a vacuum. This is tied to a game where LeBron was locked up and looked less effective under pressure. That kind of moment always brings the old comparisons right back to the surface. When LeBron struggles, people ask whether Jordan would have struggled the same way. When LeBron gets slowed down, people ask whether Jordan would have found a way to impose his will anyway. When the Lakers, or any LeBron-led team, looks vulnerable in the postseason, the GOAT conversation shows up again like it never left. And Stephen A. loves that kind of debate because he knows how to frame it for maximum impact. He knows how to connect the moment to the myth. And in this case, the myth is Jordan. The standard is Jordan. The warning is that if you watched Jordan and LeBron and really understood what you saw, then Jordan is the GOAT. And the reason he believes that is because Jordan didn't just beat teams, he broke them. That is a very old-school basketball judgment, but it is also a very powerful one. But he's been in more. He's been in 10 of them. Well, did you see the soft-ass competition he had to go through in the Eastern Conference? Are you kidding me? Michael Jordan ruined franchises. The Cleveland Cavaliers didn't win a title because of Michael Jordan. That is why this clip exploded the way it did. It gave Jordan fans exactly what they wanted to hear. It gave LeBron fans another reason to defend their guy. It gave neutral fans more fuel for the eternal debate. And it reminded everybody that every time LeBron gets locked up in a playoff moment, the Jordan conversation gets louder, sharper, and more emotional. That is the reality. At the end of the day, Stephen A. Smith did what he always does. He turned a basketball moment into a full-throttle declaration. He did not hedge. He did not soften it. He did not pretend the debate was closer than he thinks it is. He said it plainly: if you watched Jordan and LeBron and really understood what you saw, then Jordan is the GOAT. And the reason he believes that is because Jordan didn't just beat teams, he broke them. That is a hard standard to beat, and that is why this conversation is never going away. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more NBA debates, playoff reactions, and deep dive basketball content just like this, and drop your thoughts in the comments because the LeBron versus Jordan debate is only getting louder from here.